In just 5 minutes, a powerful judge tried to silence Jasmine Crockett with a $15,000 fine. No evidence, no hearing, just power abused. But what he didn't expect was that this very moment would push him to the brink of his own downfall. What was supposed to be a routine procedural hearing exploded into a breathless battle between arrogance and justice. Can a black woman armed only with law and courage bring an entire system to its knees? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. It was a cold, gray morning in downtown Chicago. Courtroom 2A was scheduled for a minor procedural hearing, just a quick check on paperwork. But the moment Jasmine Crockett stepped inside, she knew something was wrong. Jasmine, a seasoned lawyer and former prosecutor, had seen enough to sense when a room was rigged. The silence was too deep. The court staff avoided eye contact. Even the walls felt like they were listening. Judge Richard Monroe was already seated, tall, stern, and known for pushing verdicts through without hearing full arguments. He didn't read files. He delivered sentences. His cold stare followed Jasmine as she walked in. He didn't look at her like a lawyer. He looked at her like an obstacle. The courtroom felt like a trap, and Jasmine was walking straight into it. Everyone could feel it. The air wasn't just tense. It was controlled. The judge wasn't there for justice. He was there for power. Judge Monroe entered with a presence that sucked the air out of the room. He didn't pause. He didn't greet the court. He didn't glance at the counsel tables. He simply sat, adjusted his robe with one sharp tug, and looked straight ahead, eyes cold and flat. His voice came next, low, clipped, and without hesitation. This matter is already clear. The defendant is in violation of Code 22F. The fine is $15,000 to be paid immediately. That is the court's decision. No build-up, no explanation, no process. Just a blunt declaration, as if the case had been tried and buried long before the doors opened. Jasmine hadn't spoken a word. Her files were still closed, her hands resting calmly on the table, now curled slightly, controlled but tense. Across the room, even the prosecutor looked up in confusion, brows furrowed, shifting in his seat like he'd missed something crucial. He hadn't. Everyone had, because there hadn't been anything to miss. No arguments, no evidence, not even the usual procedural opening. Just a ruling, final, cold, irrevocable. It was a legal firing squad, and Jasmine was expected to nod, accept it, and walk away wounded. She didn't, but first she tried to understand. "Your Honor," she said carefully, rising just halfway from her seat, "with all respect, we haven't even begun. I haven't presented a single argument." Monroe's eyes narrowed, not with reconsideration, but irritation. "Because none are needed," he snapped. "You violated the code. It's not up for debate." His tone wasn't simply dismissive. It was biting, deliberate, meant to humiliate. This wasn't a misunderstanding of the law. It was a calculated message. Sit down. Be quiet. Don't challenge this court. Jasmine didn't react the way most would. No raised voice, no visible frustration. She remained standing, hands calmly folded in front of her, every movement precise. Her heart might have been pounding beneath her blazer, but on the outside she was unshakable. That control wasn't just instinct, it was training. Years as a prosecutor had taught her. In a courtroom where power is misused, restraint is the sharpest weapon. She took a breath, then spoke with clarity. "Your Honor, with full respect, I am formally requesting the opportunity to present my defense. Due process requires that I be heard." Her voice cut through the silence, not loud but unmistakably firm. She wasn't asking. She was invoking a right. But Monroe didn't flinch. He didn't even pretend to consider her request. He looked straight at her now, jaw locked, as if her mere words offended him. He leaned forward, elbows on the bench, and said louder, "Miss Crockett, this is not your stage. This is my courtroom, and I will not entertain speeches or stall tactics." The words cracked like a whip. "The violation is on record. The fine is final. You want to argue? Take it to appeals, if it gets that far." His tone was sharp, final, laced with contempt. Not legal skepticism, but personal contempt. The kind that turns rulings into punishments and punishments into warnings for everyone watching. The courtroom had become a theater of intimidation, and Jasmine was the target. She didn't move. She stood like a statue under pressure. But inside her mind, everything accelerated. Fast, focused. This wasn't legal procedure. It was an execution of control. Monroe wasn't upholding the law. He was using the bench as a throne. His voice, his posture, his refusal to even let her speak, it all pointed to one truth. He'd already made up his mind. Nothing she said would change it. But it wasn't just about her case. It was about silencing her in front of everyone. To make an example, to remind every attorney, every clerk, every citizen in the gallery, you challenge me and I will crush you, openly, without hesitation. Jasmine could feel it. This wasn't about the code violation anymore. It was about her presence, her confidence, her unwillingness to play submissive. Monroe wasn't reacting to law. He was reacting to her power, her voice, and now he was trying to strip it from her, one ruling at a time. The prosecutor avoided eye contact. The court reporter paused her fingers. The room wasn't neutral anymore. It had turned hostile, and yet, in that silence, Jasmine found clarity. Monroe had made one thing absolutely clear. He never planned to give her a fair hearing. He didn't come to listen. He came to dominate. Still, she didn't sit. She didn't fold. Her voice was lower now, but stronger. Then I suppose we proceed on the record. Every word, every step. Because if the law won't protect me today, the truth will, and every injustice needs a witness. And that was when Jasmine made her move. Not with anger, not with defiance, but with something far more dangerous to a man like Judge Monroe: clarity. She'd watched enough to understand exactly what was happening. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't haste. This was surgical suppression. She wasn't being fined for a code violation. She was being silenced for who she was, for the strength in her voice and the refusal in her posture. Everything in Monroe's courtroom had been arranged to deliver a message. You don't belong here. You may know the law, but I own the bench. He had the gavel, but Jasmine had something heavier: precedent. And as she reached into her folder, the shift in the room was almost audible. The quiet wasn't respect anymore. It was anticipation, the kind of stillness before the first domino falls. She laid out the documents like pieces to a machine only she knew how to operate. Each page had been chosen, marked, and rehearsed for this moment. Your Honor, she said, voice steady and sharp, we're about to talk precedent, because what you're doing has already been judged, and it didn't hold up. She raised the first page. Sullivan v. State of Illinois, 2017. The defendant was fined under a local enforcement code. No photos, no inspection reports, no affidavit, just the officer's claim. That case went to appeal. The court found the process unconstitutional and reversed the fine in full. She let it sit for a moment, then continued. In its written opinion, the appellate court stated, where there is no evidence, there is no enforcement. The integrity of due process demands more than assumption. Her tone never changed. She wasn't performing. She was building pressure, line by line, statute by statute. She flipped to the second page. Henderson versus City of St. Petersburg, 2019. An officer issued a fine based on a visual assessment. No photos, no timestamps, no physical record. The city argued it was standard practice. The court disagreed. In its ruling, it stated, administrative authority does not exist in a vacuum. Fines must be based on verifiable fact, or they are void under constitutional review. She looked up slowly, locking eyes with Monroe. That ruling was upheld at every level. And that was the first time Monroe shifted. It was small, a tightening of the jaw, a slight adjustment of his shoulders, but Jasmine caught it. So did the others. The clerk's typing resumed with urgency. The prosecutor uncrossed his legs and leaned forward, suddenly more spectator than participant. Jasmine leaned in too, not physically but rhetorically. You fined me $15,000 without evidence, without allowing argument, without even opening the hearing. There is no documentation, no testimony, just your word. And respectfully, Your Honor, that is not justice. That is authoritarianism in judicial robes. A subtle wave of discomfort moved through the gallery. Attorneys in the back exchanged glances, silently asking, "Is she really saying this?" She was, and she wasn't finished. Jasmine tapped her file. "I bring these cases not as theory, but as binding reminders of what this courtroom is supposed to represent. When a judge ignores process, silences defense, and rules without proof, they are not interpreting the law. They are violating it, and I won't let that happen quietly." She stood still, eyes locked on Monroe, her voice lowered to a near whisper, but it carried like thunder. "You can ignore my argument, but you can't erase precedent, and you will not rewrite the Constitution from behind that bench." Judge Monroe didn't blink at first, but Jasmine noticed the shift. His jaw tightened. His eyes darted toward the clerk, then the prosecution table. His fingers, once calm, began to tap in uneven rhythm. He was calculating. Every move he'd made was built on control, intimidation, on the assumption Jasmine would back down or crack. But now the foundation fractured. Jasmine hadn't just defended herself. She'd done it with surgical precision, citing appellate rulings and constitutional language he couldn't dismiss without mocking the very system he claimed to uphold. And that terrified him more than anger ever could. His voice, when it finally came, had lost its bite. "This court will recess for 15 minutes. No explanation, no acknowledgement. It was an escape disguised as procedure, a retreat hidden behind decorum." The bailiff opened the door to chambers as Monroe disappeared behind it, his robe trailing like a shield he could no longer carry. Jasmine knew exactly what had just happened. That wasn't a break to consider evidence. It was a tactical withdrawal, to strategize, to call someone, to dig for anything to discredit her. Because now he wasn't just facing a lawyer, he was facing accountability. The courtroom remained still, unsure if it had permission to breathe again. The clerk looked unsettled. The prosecutor fidgeted. Jasmine didn't move. She stood, back straight, hands resting on the stack of precedents she'd unloaded like live ammunition. She wasn't looking for applause. She was reading the room. And what she saw was exactly what Monroe feared: doubt. Doubt creeping into the cracks of his authority. Doubt rippling through every observer who just witnessed what few dared say aloud. Even a judge can be wrong. Even a judge can be cornered. 15 minutes. That was all he'd asked for. But Jasmine knew better. This wasn't reflection. It was 15 minutes to save himself.